Hi, welcome to Echoes from the Satellite. I'm Karen. Today, I want to talk about something a little bit different. Not a fiction book, but a book I read recently, which I think a lot of you would probably connect with. I had a long trip that I had to take over 4 hours each way, flying across the country. And I picked up this book right here called Playing at the World, Volume 1, The Invention of Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, we're going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons this episode. This is by John Peterson, and he's written a number of books on games, the history of games, things like that. This is by MIT Press, and this is actually the second edition of this book. This came out in 2024. The first edition came out in 2012. So he's redone this somewhat. Very entertaining book, though. And I wanted to talk about this today because it really struck me. There were just a lot of things in it. I kind of knew the history of Dungeons and Dragons. I think we all, if you've played it and been interested or even just sort of absorbed the culture around it, you hear a lot of things like, oh, Gary Gygax, I mean, he's been on The Simpsons, right? So it's a little unavoidable in geek culture. Um, for me, being a geek kid growing up, of course, I wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a little bit older than a lot of folks I see on BookTube. So my first set of Dungeons and Dragons was the basic D&D in the box with the blue booklet. Very quickly after that, the Monster Manual came out. So then we started playing with that, and it was all advanced D&D, and that sort of set me down the track of playing D&D. Then it went away for many years for me, and then came back later on, and then it's kind of been an on and off thing, although I haven't played much in the last few years. But it's always been something I've been interested in, always something that, kind of piques my interest. And so I picked up this book and really got just fascinated. I mean, it just kept my attention the whole time. I couldn't put it down because the way Peterson tells this story, and it can be somewhat scholarly, but he just sort of peels back the onion. And there were so many things that maybe I didn't necessarily know, or I hadn't bothered to learn about how D&D came to be, like the D&D origin story, essentially. So he goes back and looks at the history of and the culture, and this was the important thing, not just the history, not just the data, like this happened when, and who was involved, but he looks at the culture surrounding wargaming in the 50s and 60s. And this was something I had like zero knowledge about. So he goes and he looks at what was happening with these war gamers and basically all men and mostly white men who were doing this wargaming here in the States. A lot of it was concentrated back east or in the Midwest. And they were playing these board games, mostly board games, mostly around famous battles that had occurred in the past. And so this is sort of the stew pot from which D&D eventually comes forth. And so he's looking at these people and their interests and who they are. Eventually, miniatures really gets involved, and then people start thinking about doing medieval wargaming and miniatures. And this is where the people we know and are familiar with, Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, come into play. So he really tells a story about these folks, Gygax in Lake Geneva, Arneson in the Twin Cities area, and how they came into contact with each other. It's not quite like my peanut butter and your chocolate, or your chocolate and my peanut butter, but it is a story of how these two guys with similar ideas, and then a lot of other folks around them who are kind of unsung heroes, how they all contributed ideas into this sort of fantasy campaign. And at first, they didn't really like the idea of role playing. Doesn't come along for a while because they're still so ingrained in wargaming, right? But then at some point, they start thinking, well, instead of like having an army, what if we just had like a hero who is as strong as an army. And this comes about because of some of the stuff they're doing with miniatures. So Peterson really explains like how this all happens. And he's amazing in the amount of research he did. Like normally, if I have a book and it has like, there's a ton of footnotes in this book. I actually had two um, uh, bookmarks when I was reading this. I would have one for the part in the book where I was reading and one for the bookmarks, the footnotes, so I could see, go back and forth. I was constantly flipping back and forth because he really goes into a lot of detail in explaining what was happening, which I appreciated. So then, this idea of, well, instead of playing an army, we could play characters. And I was like, what? And it was like, yeah, we could have characters. We could play heroes who could fight, I don't know, monsters. And they're like, what? We can't bring fantasy into wargaming. So there were a lot of people who were pushing back against this idea of, we don't want fantasy. That's for children. Why? What are you guys doing? Why? Oh, dragons? That's like ridiculous. So they had to deal with pushback. But then there were some people who were like, oh man, that sounds really cool. So they found, this culture, this group of people who wanted to do what they were doing. They grew it. And it's interesting to me, this was the part that was really fascinating to me, is how the culture grew across the country. So a lot of it had to do with like college age people, moving around the country, going back home, finding things happening. Like people are playing this game. What is it? I don't know. It's called Dungeon. And so there was a lot of also misinformation being spread, and people would try to understand the rules and play it, in their hometown. So it was like these weird homebrew versions of D&D that were going on. But also a lot of what was happening was in what we would probably think of as like zines now, what they called amateur press associations, APAs. So they would put together, people would be like using their little, what did they call them? Little, I forget what you call them. You'd have to actually put all the like letters into a thing and run it, ink pad over it, or they would typewrite things and copy them. And then they would like staple all these things together and then they'd mail them out to people. So this was a really popular thing that happened back in like the 60s. People would make their little zines and they would distribute them to other people. And that was how a lot of information about Dungeons and Dragons got spread. And this was something I had never heard of until I read this book. So that was really fascinating. And again, because they were spreading that information that way, there was misinformation and there was a lot of homebrew going on, so that was kind of fascinating to see some of the homebrew ideas. And that's also where a lot of rules that we have now or things that we have now, like the thief or I think what else, rangers and other stuff first started to bubble up, was in these homebrew zines that were out there. And D&D also got spread through Gen Con, so the big gaming convention, which then was little. It was held in like the horticulture hall of Lake Geneva, and grew massively. But it was spread through the convention as well. And so Peterson does a really good job describing, how it grew, the things that happened, the different personalities involved, how people were hearing about it. And then also some of the weird things that happened, on one hand, Gygax was encouraging of people to use their own imagination, create their own rules. But then at other times, he would sort of like put his foot down and say, well, that's not really D&D. That thing you're doing is not D&D. And so that caused a lot of friction for him with people out there who were trying to play it. So that's kind of an interesting thing that happened. And so anyway, I think if you're interested in D&D, if it's something that you enjoy or have enjoyed, this is a really, really good book. It comes in at, not counting the footnotes, it comes in at 294 pages. For some of you, that will be just right. For others, it might not be something you want to read. But I will suggest that if you are into it, you pick this up. And he has a second volume, which is out probably by the time I publish this. It will be out. It's coming out April 8th. That book is the companion piece to this. So this focuses on sort of the history and origins of D&D, how it came to be. The second book is the second volume, so it's playing at the World Vol.1, and that one is called Vol.2, Three Pillars. So that one is going to focus more on the settings of D&D and the characters, like the character classes and things that went into creating those things. So it's definitely, I already pre-ordered it, so I'll read it when it comes in. But anyway, just wanted to share this. So kind of a quick video today. But this is a book that I think a lot of folks, if you're, if you're into sci-fi, there's a good chance that you're into D&D or role-playing. So anyway, wanted to share that with you all. Hope that you get a chance to enjoy it. And if you have read it, or if you're into D&D, or you just have some thoughts, please leave me a comment, and I would love to see what you think. So that's it for today. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you soon.